Hey people, it's Niles talking. I'd like to thank Kishel B and Pro Black Fort Free for telling me about this story. So this is from Time.magazine.com. Melinda Gates lays out her biggest concern for the next phase of the COVID-19 pandemic. From 2018 to 2019, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation gave more money to the World Health Organization than any entity except the US government. President Donald Trump cutting ties with the International Health Agency in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Gates Foundation's work is coming to sharper relief than ever. Co-chair Bill Gates announced at the Global Vaccine Summit on June 4th it will give $1.6 billion over 5 years to the Vaccine Alliance, GAVI, to help ensure that people around the world have access to vaccines regardless of income. Not clean water, not jobs, not housing, but vaccines. The Gates Foundation in 1999 pledged, or even electricity, none of those things. The Gates Foundation in 1999 pledged $750 million to help establish GAVI, and the organization has since vaccinated more than 760 million children in underserved areas. Ahead of the June 4th pledge event, Time spoke with Gates Foundation co-chair Melinda Gates about equitable solutions to COVID-19, the need for optimism in times of anxiety, and what will happen to the World Health Organization. What happened to George Floyd was brutal and horrible and should never happen to anyone anywhere. This is a moment of reckoning in the United States. We will all need to really pause during this time and learn as best as we can from it. Even before we saw the census death, COVID had already started to show us gaps and structural problems in our country. We are seeing black men die at a disproportionate rate. We know the way out of COVID-19 will be a vaccine, and it needs to go out equitably. And first off, one of the reasons why black people were supposedly dying was because of many things that had contributed to the lack of health. Food deserts, poverty, unemployment, lack of access to health care, and poor diet. And I remember how Tariq Nasheed was posting about it. He said, when it was Chinese people dying of it, it was sympathy. When it was black people dying, it was, it's your own fault. Let's keep going. How do you make sure that happens? You make sure the vaccine doesn't go to the highest bidder. Gavi used a pool set of resources from government and private citizens so you can make sure that when you go to purchase a vaccine, you can purchase in bulk at low prices. We've gotten the delivery system over 20 years really set up appropriately. So this whole thing has been in planning for 20 years. This pledging event means governments around the world will step in global cooperation to all say, we care about this vaccine getting out equitably, since their contributions will help Gavi secure and distribute doses when they become available. The first people that need this vaccine are 60 million healthcare workers around the world, deserve to get it before anybody else. Then you start tiering. Who needs it after healthcare workers? And I want you all to pay attention to this. This is the moment of truth. In the US, that will be black people next. Tuskegee, anyone? If you take this, you deserve to die. Man, you be stupid as fuck. Quite honestly, and many other people of color, they are having disproportionate effects from COVID-19. From there, people with underlying health conditions, and then people who are older. Those are the ones who will all need it first. We also need to think about essential workers who are keeping our grocery stores open for us, so we can buy food or making sure that food moves through the warehouses. We're all concerned that the vaccine not go to the highest bidder. There are some signs that early doses may get bought up, and I think that would be a shame for the entire world. Yes, because they want to make sure that everybody dies at equal rates. It's important for world leaders to stop and look arms and say this is about everybody, whether you live in India or Tanzania or Switzerland. And I'd like to remind you that in Tanzania, the test that they found that they were being given when they used it on a fruit and a goat or some other animal, both tested positive. So how can you be sure that anybody who is infected is actually infected with this COVID disease when the tests are faulty? How will the U.S. pulling out of the WHO affect the organization's work? The WHO is not a perfect institution. No institution is perfect. But the middle of a pandemic is the last moment you should be making changes or pulling out. WHO is set up to deal with pandemics like this, to deal with things like smallpox, to deal with things like polio. The U.S. government is the largest funder of the WHO. Nobody can replace the funding the U.S. is putting into the WHO. This decision will touch everything at the WHO. I worry deeply about polio. I'm worried deeply about measles. I'm worried about Ebola. If we don't think we were global, COVID has certainly pointed out to us. The United States was a founding member of the WHO after World War II because we saw how important it was. To be going back on something that we know will help all of us, that's just senseless. It's another thing to do a post-mortem when this crisis is over and say, hey, we need some structural changes to WHO, or we need different governance, but not in the middle of the pandemic. You just don't do that. Has the global health community ever faced a challenge like COVID-19? No, the Spanish influenza in 1918, I guess you could say, but we weren't traveling on planes then the way we are now. The vaccine creation challenge is also unprecedented, both in terms of the speed of development and the number of doses. The world has never created 7 billion doses of a vaccine in this short amount of time. So how can anybody be sure that they're safe? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't any type of medicine take years of testing to be sure that it's safe? I mean, and I say that with commas, but that's what is supposed to happen. Like, loads of clinical trials and tests on animals and simulated stuff. Whatever. Let's keep going. I mean, here's me talking with logic and common sense. Where's that when people are supposed to just be afraid and do what the government tells them? The good thing is the world is actually more coordinated than I think many people realize, and that's lucky. What gives you hope right now? I have pictures here where I'm sitting in my office of moms I've met all over the developing world who have told me about the lengths they go to get their kids vaccines. Really? They go to vaccines. I've seen and heard stories about them walking for miles to get water or for work or go to school, but for a vaccine? Or they walk 15 kilometers in the heat, they're carrying the baby on the back. These moms know the difference the vaccines make in their kids' lives. When I think about them, they give me so much hope. Even when I see some of the pushback on vaccines here in the United States, yes, people questioning their bodily autonomy being taken away and being given to the government, and the government saying, well, you take it or else. I mean, I ask this, if you can't decide what goes in your body, what freedom have you got? The other thing that gives me hope is this next generation. I'm seeing the way they talk about race. They're willing to stand up and listen. They're willing to go to march in the streets and say, this isn't right. That gives me a lot of hope. This is the wife of the man who's talked about Africa being overpopulated and saying that it needs to be, the population needs to be reduced with birth control, what he basically meant abortion, and vaccines. And he's the kind of person who said there's too many people in the world and we need to reduce it by about 15% via his methods. So if you take this, again, you're dumb as fuck. Anyway, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. I'll leave this article so you can read it yourself. Peace.